Welcome back and thank you for visiting us for part 2 of our journey through the Slant village. My name is Johan, and in this episode we'll be exploring the inside of a Mandan Earthlodge. Follow me as we make our way inside the Earthlodge here. We got a nice fire going so we can just gather around and learn some things about Mandan culture and life. So this here is about an average sized Earthlodge, about roughly 30 feet in diameter. It would have held a family of about 12 to 15 people, and all one family, extended family included, so you're living with grandparents, possibly your parents, in-laws, and various relatives. So not a lot of privacy, definitely not something I would have been comfortable with, but of course that's what this tribe was used to. That was common to them. And if you look around, you'll see this is an incredibly impressive structure. The main posts holding up the Earthlodge are all made out of cottonwood, but unfortunately that's a very soft wood, so it rots quickly, especially when exposed to moisture, so they would actually have had to rebuild these every 5 to 7 years. So if you look over here, you can see the different materials that were required for constructing the Earthlodge. First we have the cottonwood beams, which are our main support, and then above the cottonwoods you can see a woven layer of willow branches. Above that, it's tough to see, but peeking out in some areas, you might be able to see the woven layer of grass that would be covering the entire Earthlodge. And then the fourth layer would be river clay and dirt, and it would be packed together, sometimes 3 feet thick at the bottom here. And then as it rises up, it tapers off to about 3 inches at the top. And that kept the Earthlodge nice and insulated, nice and cool in the summers, and it helps trap the heat and keep it watertight from all the moisture in the winters. The remarkable thing is that it would have actually been solely the woman's job to build the Earthlodge. The men did help put in the 4 main cottonwood posts here that you see in the center, but practically everything else, the cutting of the trees, carrying it up from the riverside, assembling it all, that was considered women's work. So next, it's interesting to point out this section of the Earthlodge. Typically, a winter count would be displayed over on this barrier here. And winter counts are similar to what we might think of as calendars, except they signify important events that happened throughout the year. And so a different winter count would have different images signifying these important events. And also you can look over and see both of these willow backrests, and these would have been honored and reserved for the elders of the lodge. And of course, I'm sure you notice we have a fire going right now, and this of course would have been commonplace back if the Mandan were still here in this lodge. And the purpose of the fire, it helps dry out the wood so the cottonwoods don't rot as quickly. It also, of course, would be important for cooking different meals, and naturally in winter it was necessary to keep the Earthlodge warm as the heat stays trapped inside. But if you follow the smoke up, you'll see the Earthlodge is built so that the smoke can escape through the smoke hole, and of course that keeps it comfortable inside the Earthlodge here so the smoke doesn't all collect. But you might be wondering what happens if it rains or snows. Well, if that were to happen, they would simply cover the top of the Earthlodge with a bison hide or a willow branch frame covered in a bison hide, and that would keep all the moisture out. Now here's just a small sample of some regular household items that would have been used in a Mandan home, and they tell an interesting story. They're all the same. They all serve the same function. They're hide fleshers, but this one shows it's just made out of a single bone, so it's an earlier design, and eventually they attached knife river flint, and you can imagine how that would be a little more effective. But in the roughly around the 1600s, metal was introduced to the Mandan, and it was being traded to them as a tribe, and then of course they could attach that to one of these hide fleshers, making it naturally much more effective. Two other household tools that we have here are knives that would have been made out of the bison scapula. This one, which I'm holding here, the big blade, would have been used to cut a squash into squash rings, and then this more familiar shape would have been used to cut meat or different materials. Stone tools were used throughout the village, and they had multiple functions, one of these simply being cutting down timbers. Different from other tribes, the Mandan slept on elevated beds off the ground. They would have used hides for comfort and privacy on the beds. So if you look over here, you can see some typical foods that would have been eaten by the Mandan and preserved. We have corn, we have beans, squash, fish, and also sunflower seeds here. And oftentimes, if you're from North Dakota, you're familiar with how long our winters are. So it would be incredibly important to preserve the different varieties of food that the Mandan had. So what they would do is they would dry the food outside on scaffolds, these raised wooden platforms, and they'd leave them out there in the sun to dry. And you can actually see over here, these are slices of squash that have been dried up. And then after the food has been dried, that helps it to be preserved. And they would actually bury the food in cache pits, what we call them, which could be as deep as 7 to 8 feet. And they would line the inside of the Earthlodge, and of course you wouldn't be able to see it because it would be covered up. But then throughout the winter, as they need food, they could bury it up or dig it up again and collect the food. In conclusion, the reason this village was abandoned in 1781 was because of a smallpox epidemic that wiped out 80% of the population here. It was devastating. And of course, the Mandan at that point were far too weak to defend this village, so they banded together with the neighboring Mandan tribes and moved up north, building new villages by the Knife River, where they would later meet Lewis and Clark in 1804, entering the Mandan into a new era of their history and culture. This concludes this episode of Discovering Fort Abraham Lincoln. Thank you for joining me today. I really enjoyed being able to guide you through the village, the Slant village, and I really hope to see you all again soon.